This is big. This is real big. Like I said, there is nothing bigger. You will not hear a message larger in the next 1,000 years than what I'm talking about. There literally is a plan. There's a blueprint. Hello, I'm John Lancaster, and welcome again to this message series entitled The Body. We're entering into the second section of a three-section message series. This one here is a little bit more practical. This one is going to be talking about what are the effects on society of the things we talked about in the first three chapters there. In section 1, we did a flyover type of blueprint type of thing of showing that, people have a blueprint for mankind. There is a large overall plan for man, not just individuals. To get into each individual is going to take some time, and that takes a little bit of study. But you have to have an overall big picture. We talked about unity and division. You've got to have a big picture, a unifying big picture, before you can find out your part. And so that's why it's very important to lay the foundation of a plan, of the big picture of mankind. In fact, in construction, they say when the plans are done, you're about half done of your project. And when the foundation is done, you're almost 75% finished. So yesterday, the last three talks there, we were laying the foundational plans, the blueprints. Today it gets kind of exciting because today we're going to talk, in my opinion, about a revolution that is happening. And this is exciting. And the reason why is because you see it just about everywhere. You see the unrest on the streets. You hear it in the news everywhere. It's like all the institutions, and if you remember we talked about last time, all the institutions are cracking and falling down. All the institutions of man are crumbling. The institutions of government, of education, of business, of family, of church and religion, it's all falling. But we wonder, what's the answer? They join on the street to protest, and everybody's got their own individual protest. We're living a very tumultuous time of great change. And we talked about in the first one about that T note, the time of unrest. Well, there's a revolution about to occur. And I believe that it is what I'm about to talk about. It is a revolution. It is a reformation. And so reformation has the word to form, and it is which means to go back. And being a builder, and I've done a lot of remodeling, this is kind of exciting. It's not like this is a brand new idea that I'm sharing here. This is actually a 6,000 or more year old idea. Actually before the time of man. This was an idea, a set of plans, a revolutionary idea that is actually a reforming of the way things are. And we talked about in the last one, it's going to be a reform from this form to this form. It's a new form, and we're reforming it. And it's going to affect everything. It's going to come in like a tsunami because it's the only thing that can last in these days. And so this next section, we are going to be talking about the revolution in the area of some of our institutions. And we're going to start out with the institution of business. And so, this is very exciting for me because I've been in business all my life. I think I mentioned that last one. And yet it's a hot topic right now, especially in Christendom, because about 13 years ago, this new type of thinking and philosophy started hitting, and it was talking about the new 7 mountains. You might have heard about it, where they took, it was a revelation, Lauren Cunningham and I think another guy had this concept hit them about, wow, if Christians were to just take over all these mountaintops of institutions in our society, we would be a lot more powerful and a lot more influential than we are. And so they labeled these different ones, like this one was media and entertainment. He said, if you could just get to the top of it, to rule it, then we wouldn't be like slaves to it. We could actually rule the area of media. So instead of, complaining about the things that are on TV, or, we could rule. All right. They have other things. They talked about arts and entertainment. The arts. If we could do that, we wouldn't have to worry about crucifixes and urine. We could have our own art. And so basically, they went through all the institutions from. They even called family an institution, and business, and then actually religion was one. Education was another. And government was another. If we could put people in key places of government and education, we could change the educational system. We could change the business world. And we could rule. We could rule. Well, I understand why they could get excited, because it opened it up. Not just a religion, like this is where people just going to church and coming back. Christians were now getting excited that my area that I'm in could actually be a place where I could contribute instead of just sitting on the pew somewhere. And so this is a very popular teaching right now. It's called the 7 Mountain Teachings. But I have a little bit of problem with this. And I think if you saw in the last one that we talked about that, wait a minute, ruling is really not the best thing. In fact, Jesus talked against it. Now, if God placed you and raised you up, well, that's one thing. But just trying to take it, trying to be king of the hill, well, how is being king of the hill somebody else going to try to knock you off? I mean, do you think if a Christian can get on top here, that the Muslims or Jewish people or Buddhists, somebody else isn't going to want to take your position? So this ruling thing, this king thing, makes a lot of sense, just as it made a lot of sense to the disciples, and it didn't make sense to serve. And so now there's all kinds of seminars and weekend conferences you can go to learn how to get on top of your area. And to me, it's no different than the very thing Jesus was trying to talk against. It's not that you wouldn't eventually rule, but don't go in it to rule. Don't let that be the thing you go after. Now, the reason why I love, and we're only going to be talking about business, government, and education, okay? Because in my opinion, all of this is business. And let me explain what I'm talking about. Business is basically busyness. What are you busy doing? Jesus said he went about his Father's business, and yet he did so many things. He healed the sick. He spoke. He did all of these things, and just as Jesus did, we are to be about our Father's business. We are to be busy. And why would media? If you're in the media business, I don't think anybody who's doing media would say, hey, it's not my business. No, that's your business, Say arts. If you're an artist or a songwriter or a performer, that's your business. Your family, that's your business. When somebody gets into your family, you say, get out of our business. This is mind your own business. This is our business. And now even religion, I believe it's turned out to be a business. It really is. If that's what you do, that's your business. Education and government, those are jobs, that's your business. We have just, over the years, gotten so accustomed to the concept that business is this thing that we talked about in the last one. This big pyramidal thing. You got to get an MBA. You got to open it up, maybe get some angel investors, going to have stock. And this is what we think of as business. You got that same shape, money at the top, market share. And I'm going, well, no. Business is just what you're busy doing. It's what you were, my finger, when it moves, that's its business. My eyes to see, that's its business. That's what it does. We've just taken this word and secularized it and made it this. And so that's why the concept of business is kind of unappealing to a lot of people. It has a concept of, I don't know, I don't think I want to get into business. I'd like to get into arts, or I'd like to get into some of these other things. And yet, I would like to kind of turn that around and say everything is business. In fact, I believe that business is ministry. That's why I don't see the difference between religion and what you do. Why did we have this concept of secular and holy, of laity and clergy? That makes no sense. It makes no sense to separate the two. Jesus didn't. I mean, he was a carpenter 10 times as long as he was walking around the earth doing the other things that we call ministry. Everything he did, he was a hard-working carpenter. And so I believe everything you do is your business. You're supposed to hear and obey. And so basically, business being ministry, if we could understand this concept, the world would literally have a revolution. There would be a change of people would start to place importance on the things that they do. They would not act like second-class citizens. Like we spoke of in the last one, this type of thing has sort of a caste system to it. Very, very similar in the Eastern culture. The caste system with the Brahmins all the way down to you got the untouchables at the bottom, and then you have cows, and everybody in between, the workers and everything like that. Well, we have our own here. And it's the pastor, the priest, and all that down, or the CEO and the workers, and just about in every area. You got the star of the show, and then you got the hands, and you got the workers on the show, and the roadies, and so you got this caste system, and so this is why people are always trying to, quote, move up, except for the fact that if your business is not this, if you're not naturally talented in areas of oversight, then the Peter principle is going to occur. You're going to get elevated to a place of incompetence. And so when we look at business, not in this shape, and not in this shape, the shape of ruling, but if we look at business in the shape of serving, I think it takes on a whole nother concept. And the concept of a servant business. A servant business. Now, what would a servant business be like? We hear a lot of, there's a lot of talk in business colleges. Well, the customer's first and stuff like that. They don't have a clue what servant business is. It basically is a wolf in sheep's clothing. They think this way and they speak this way. They say the customer's always first. Baloney, come on. It's the stockholders are always first, okay? But a true servant business, what would it look like? Well, as we mentioned in the last one, that just maybe the worker's not at the bottom, maybe the worker's at the top, like in sports. The worker is the athlete. And if he's at the top, and the CEO is at the bottom, and all the managers in between. And then we talked about in the last one how the servant model is so much more efficient because you don't have to have all these levels of control. You don't have to have incredible levels of management and money and resources and energy held gluing it together. So if the CEO wanted to move something or the business needed to make a change, This takes a lot of effort, and it's a lot of weight. And there's a lot of people wanting to get out of this pyramidal structure. They're wanting to, if they ever found a company that was shaped like this, they drop it in a heartbeat. They would leave this and go to this in a second. And so this is really exciting for me, because there's going to be a revolution in business that people who shape their business this way are going to be the only ones standing. The only businesses left on the block. A person comes into town and sets up a shop like this. All these people are going to leave and come here, because this person is looking at their life and their calling as a service, as a ministry. There's a reason why so many people get into ministry, because they want their life to matter. They don't want a secular job, because it feels like, oh, the only thing I can do is give money to a ministry. Well, that's not the end game. The end game is God made you a certain way, and there's some talents you have. And it can be a comedian, it could be a singer, it could be a builder, it could be anything, an actor, any of those things. And when you do that, when, like in Chariots of Fire, when you say, I feel his presence and you fill in the blank. Well, that's the Christ in you. That's the glory that if you did it, it would blow people away. And if you do that thing, if you serve in that area, amazing things begin to occur. And so when you take your gift and you apply it, especially if you can find a company like this, amazing things happen. Let me give you kind of an illustration of what's out there now. You have people, this is the concept in especially in Christian businesses. I have a business, I'm going to make money, and I'm going to take my money when I'm done. I'm just going to work hard and get as much as I can. In fact, this is the philosophy that's even in Rick Warren's book on Purpose-Driven Life. He says, make as much money as you can, and I want you to give it to the church here, and then we will then do stuff with it. That's the concept. Work real hard in your business. Business is this thing, and the only good that comes out of it, it would be your money. And that's the concepts we have. And so you have it everywhere. You see it in Bill Gates. He works real hard, makes $50 billion. Now he's going to spend his time now. He gets out of the computer business, and he goes into this. He creates another business, a philanthropic type of business, so that he can give things away. But Bill Gates never thought about his company being a ministry. It was just business, stockholder money, all this kind of stuff, so that he can have money. And yet, here's this beautiful computer mind that now has to learn about the social sciences and the medical fields. He has to make a completely change. Why didn't he serve in his business? Let me give you an illustration of what I'm talking about that's really exciting. There's a company, and believe it or not, it's in India, and it's called the Aravind Eye Clinic, or Aravind, however you want to spell it. Aravind Eye Clinic. And when I found out about that, I was like, I almost sold everything I had to move out there. If it wasn't for the climate in India, I can't handle that much heat and humidity. I would die if I went there. But this is probably the most beautiful business I've heard about. And I don't see it much of this type of stuff here in the United States. The Aravind Eye Clinic. And it was started by Dr. V, is a long name, okay? And basically, his business is more Christ-like than anything I've seen. And he's far from a Christian. I mean, he's got a lot of Eastern thinking, but it's so beautiful. Because let me explain what he's done. He was an ophthalmologist, and he mortgaged his house and took out a loan, and he started this eye clinic because he had a burden for the blind in India. There's a large problem in India, basically because of heredity and a lot of sun, of cataracts and different types of eye diseases. and there's a lot of blindness. And in India, it's a lot of agrarian type of culture and agriculture, and when you're blind, it's probably the most paralyzing disease you can have. And so he decided to set out and simply try to cure blindness in his country. Well, long story short, he has the largest eye clinic in the world. And let me explain how he got there. He got there by serving. He noticed that the United States, we had things like Sears and McDonald's, and he took that model and he said, well, why don't we do that in the area of eye medicine? And so he began to, kind of like Ford's assembly line, he began to take people and put them in certain positions and do things that the doctor wouldn't have to do. And he got the efficiency of eye surgeries down to a science where they were doing hundreds and hundreds a day in this clinic. And then he built another clinic, and then hundreds and hundreds a day. And he got the cost lower and lower. And because his goal was not to start a business for money, his goal was to eradicate blindness. It was his mission. It was his ministry. Well, here's what happened. Here's where he's at right now. 60% of what he does is free. Absolutely free. So if you look at it, here's like 40%. And the 40% are the paying customers. And he does 60% for free. And the 40% get such a phenomenal deal, the other eye companies, the glassware companies and eye clinics can't even compete with him. His costs are so low, it's like far better than Walmart. I think it's like, $3 or $4 an eye for cataract surgery, something that we charge $3,000. And then here, for the free ones, it costs him about $1 an eye to fix, and he gives it away free. And he does millions. They'll take a bus into a village and bring back a whole group of people that are literally blind. And in 2 days, they're busing them back, and the people can see. That's an amazing thing. I just think that would be, can you imagine? I said, I'd just drive a bus just to know I'm driving a bus full of blind people, and in 2 days, I'm going to be driving a bunch of happy, seeing people. They got it for free. I think this is one of the most awesome ministries, business out there. And so he's revolutionized the whole concept. Look it up. It's on TED Talks, all these kind of things. The amazingness of what he does, the impact he's having on India is phenomenal. You say, well, he makes a lot of mistakes. Come on, that's India medicine. We've heard about that. Well, here's the amazing thing. He has gotten his costs. He builds his own glasses, all this kind of stuff. It's very professional. When you go in, you think you're at a very high-end clinic anywhere in the world. But he's got it so efficient, and he does so much stuff in-house that his costs are literally 1/100th of what we have in the United States and in Europe. His costs are 100th. And yet the people are getting... The workers, they're all paid. It's not volunteer. The doctors are paid. Okay? It's an amazing thing. And his quality is 10 times. He has 1/10, last report, 10 times the quality. 1/10 the failures. 1/10 the mistakes. That's crazy. That's glorious. It's because he's not thinking of his business as a company. How much money can I make? He's saying, how can I do it better? How can I heal more people? His business is his ministry. The Eastern thought of, it is them that we help. It is when we help them, I help myself. That we're all interconnected. They have a basic concept of this thing that Jesus was talking about. And they're not even Christians. It's amazing. So what he does is the most... it's the most Christ-like business I've seen. And it's revolutionized. In fact, he has a bunch of relatives. He has 32 of his relatives working for him. He's passed away, but 30, and they were doctors over here in the United States, and they left their practices here to join him because they felt so much joy in working here instead of their pressure situation here in the United States. Even though they were making good money in the United States as doctors, they loved this. They loved the atmosphere and culture that he had created there. And that's that joy I talked about in the last talk about serving in the mission field. It's like, unlike, like I said, people here in the States, like dentists, doctors, they do this, Monday through Friday for 50 weeks of the year. And if they're one of those folks that donate, they go on the mission field and they do this for 2 weeks. And it's the happiest 2 weeks of their life. And then they come back to this sweating by the brow life, of lawsuits and different pressure systems, just so that they can spend 2 weeks doing it the way they like. Well, why don't we have dentistry here like this? Why isn't it a ministry? Why don't you treat it like one? It's because you can't see. When you're in this type of thing, it's dark. In a pyramid, it's dark inside. You can't see anything beyond your own needs. Here, you can see. You can see as it's starting to get popular in some business schools, you can see the other 90%. And what I mean by that is there's a whole wave of business thought that's starting to shift. It's just starting to take hold now. It's basically saying, let's do your business, and as you're thinking about the other 90%, don't think about just these rich, like architects designing fancy buildings for the rich 10%. They said, what about these people? Half the people in the world live on less than $3 a day. Have to. And so this type of thinking that is now permeating some business circles are saying, wait a minute, this is an incredible market. This is an incredible market down here. This 90%, they're totally forgotten. And so you've heard of microfinancing where they'll lend like just $100 or $10 for somebody to buy a cow or a bull, and then they can sell the milk and they can literally pull people out of poverty. There's a guy right up here in Denver. He is finding great joy, and he's designed certain things like the $50 treadle pump, where it's a well and an irrigation system, so that for $50 you can like absolutely tenfold your farm. And so they lend them the money, or they basically, they're not saying how expensive can we, the Harvard business model. They're saying how cheap can we make something, and then get it to them. And guess what they're finding out? Here's the miracle of it. When you're talking billions of people, they're realizing that yes, we might be only making a buck on a treadle pump, but a billion treadle pumps. There's actually a very good business. Take the Walmart model and go underneath it. I mean, more for less. Don't make $100 off of one, make $100 off of 100. There's 90% of the people that are basically unserved. And so by flipping your vision around, there's a whole world of ministry and servant. It's like it's wide open, and there's no competition. The reason why people aren't doing it is because they can't see it. Remember we talked about in the last one of the shape? This shape, things reflect. There's no light. It's dark. When you're in this thing, you really can't see beyond the nose on your face. You're just surviving. You can't even think about other people. But when you're in this shape, it's such a giving world. It's such an exciting thing. You feel fulfilled. You feel significance, and you're successful. This world where business is ministry, it is the church. And we're going to get into that more in the last one, but it is it. Business is church. They say you can't run church like a business. Well, not if it's like this. But if it's like this, they're one and the same. This is so exciting because it literally, people wonder why, 90% of the businesses go out of business in the first 3 years. And it's because of this model. It's so full of control. But I've not met one true servant, who just said, I really want to help people, I mean, why does your cupcake business so well? Well, I just wanted to have the best cupcakes, Wow. Or how come your carpentry business took off? Well, I just like doing carpentry and I hate to see people with broken fences. A person like that doesn't have to worry about his business. But if he's creating it so that he can make money, so that he can eventually retire and play golf, and so he can store enough away, well, he's going to create a culture of greed and of ruling, and so he'll attract people to that, and there will be a lot of strife. Oh, there'll be a lot of control and strife, and no wonder you want to leave. And in businesses like that, there's incredible turnover. But like this, there's not. There's not. It's such an enjoyable way to live. I mean, like I said, I would love it. Why did all his relatives leave high-paying jobs to go work for him? Because the culture of joy, of working in a business that literally was healing. I mean, you literally are like more than the disciples. They had a few blind eyes. Imagine a busload every Thursday. Oh man, I just can't imagine how awesome that would be. But my question is, why isn't there more of that? Why don't we have something like that here in the United States? With medical bills going out the roof, with our healthcare costs skyrocketing, doctors are retiring because they can't take the stress. They can't take the stress here, and people can't pay the money. There's lawsuits, it's hell. But if you had something like this, who wouldn't sign up for it? They'd line up around the block for it. Oh man, the church does the ministry. We give it to the church. Let them do it. To honestly serve well, it has to be natural for you. It has to be your gift. You can't really serve if it's really not your thing. Like if I wanted to serve in the area of, moving houses. I don't have a very good back and I can't really help that well. But there's other things I can do that can help. And if I do my gift, it doesn't feel like work. For my eyes to see and to do 40% free is not work for my eyes, or 60%. It's an amazing thing when you give your gift. That's essentially what I'm saying. Give your gift. When you give your gift, business is church. It is. God gave you a gift. Now give it. This shape is giving. This one is taking. You begin to see this incredible wisdom of Jesus was trying to explain about the servant. That a servant anything, a servant business, servant is the most amazing life. It's like heaven on earth. It's like the kingdom of God on earth. It's like thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You think, oh, he even said, pray this way. Thy kingdom come on earth. This is the kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. This is hell. This is heaven on earth. I did a couple experiments personally just to see. When I started seeing this, I was like, wait a minute. I began to see. I went to Bible schools and stuff like that, and I got turned off on a bunch of things because I said, well, that's not really practical. I saw how, the whole thing of being a pastor and a lot of that kind of stuff, I was like, that doesn't seem like serving. I couldn't do it. I can't sell drugs and I can't be a pastor, I'm just not going to do it. You can make money at it, but I'm not going to do it. And I said, there's got to be a way. And then studying missions, I said, there's got to be a way that we can literally do some things to help eradicate poverty and housing and food needs. And so I spent the rest of my life searching for it. And so I studied missiology. And I didn't study so that I could go set up churches somewhere, or I was like, no, there's got to be a way that there's the economics of a community can be flipped upside down. There's something about business. There's something there. It's not this. I didn't want to do that, but there's something about going into a community and creating business that actually produces life. Well, a number of years ago, this is kind of a little side story. I went to Russia, and this guy had started these businesses, and because his goal is he wanted a big church. And everybody was so poor that they didn't have any money. So he said, well, to get money, I'll start businesses. And so he started all these businesses, about 10 of them, so that these people had money, so that they now joined his church so they could give him money, because his ultimate goal was to have a big church. And he wanted some people to come over and help him get an idea of how to make this thing work. And I went over there and I went, this thing here is sucking the life out of this. Like, why? How about this? I said, why don't you grow these businesses? Grow these businesses. And start another one, because he had a natural business sense. I said, you can meet in the break room, and you can rent out a place to meet, but don't have a church. He wanted one of these big Osteen things, you know what I mean? A big cathedral. And I said, why are you doing that? He said, this is your business, this is your thing. But he couldn't see it. He couldn't see it. He wanted this kingdom thing. He wanted to be that pastor who got up in front of Sunday. And so I was like, oh man. But he was on to something. He was on to something. Well, I've done a couple experiments. A number of years ago, I started a school because I was in this community, and it really didn't have a very good educational history, and so and there was a need for a private school, but a cost-effective one. And so I started this one, basically a large group homeschool, and we on opening day we had 140 students, and basically these students weren't the gifted ones; these were like the dropouts or the misfits. These are the people that we brought in, and we put them on an individual curriculum. And because I looked at each one separately, and they were basically taught by mothers. Some had some teaching background, but basically my concept was I want the people who love to teach. And so, long story short, in just 4 hours a day, from 8 to 12, with no homework, these kids went at 2 times the public school system. In 1 year, they would catch up. They would do 2 years. And very, very cheap. I think it was like $1,200 a year is what I charged for the whole year. I was like, wow, this is fun. This is serving. And so as long as you have people that want to teach, and it's an individualized curriculum, what's with all this mortar needed? We don't need all this mortar. And so very cheaply, we blew across. I think the tax base in that area was like $5,500, $6,000 a year, just in tax base per student. I'm thinking $1,200 at twice the pace. I'm like, so that was an experiment I did. I was like, oh my gosh, you can do this in anything. And people were clamoring to go to it. And so, but this was a threat to the Christian schools. And so, oh man, that's another long story. But anyway, another thing I did, another experiment I did, when I was learning this, I was like, wow, the whole sports concept, I was like, I had this curiosity. I had seen how workers, when they're lifted up, they work at another level. I remember being on a construction crew in my growing up years, and I just was amazed at how much more we got done on a Friday or with some incentives than say on a Monday. A lot of shovel leaning on Monday, and man, we kicked butt on Fridays. There was motivation. I was like, the difference was amazing. It was like this much or this much done in a day. Well, I wanted to take this experiment of maybe what if a sporting-like atmosphere of building a house. And so I started this little thing called Builder Bowl, where basically, we put the basement in, but we wanted to see how much we could get done on building a house, a simple house, around 1,200 square feet, 2 bath, 3 bedroom, and see how much we could get done. But I wanted to not just have unlimited people there, I wanted to actually do some restrictions on it. And so in football, in soccer and whatever, there's 11 versus 11. And so I thought, well, that's kind of, and I'd studied and talked about and did some research on sports. It's such a needless activity, but why do so many people watch it? And it's because it's shaped like this. And anyway, the 80% kinesthetics we talked about earlier, 75, it's shaped right and it looks right, where the worker is celebrated. And so I said, what if instead of 11 versus 11, what if we had 22 working together, not against each other, looking to break your kneecaps and beat you? What if the enemy was, homelessness? And so we took 22 people at one time. Now we had a group of them on the side, but we wanted to see how much could get done in a day with just 22 people working. So in essence, the framers would go in. We'd send in 22 framers. And then when they were almost done, about 4 or 5 or 7 of them would come off, and then the electricians would start to go in. And then when all their framers are out, then the plumbers went in. And we just wanted to see how much, with a little bit of planning, we could get done. Well, we figured it out. On the first house, we did about $65,000 worth of labor, and we actually finished the house in 14 hours. I mean, running water, siding, kitchen cabinets, sheetrock. We figured a way to dry the sheetrock and everything. $65,000. That's over $200 an hour. And first time, without practice. But we had the radio folks were there, TV, cheerleaders, bleachers. I mean, we had live band playing. So we wanted a celebration where the worker was celebrated. But we also, the supervisor in their normal business, the supervisor or their boss, we put shirts on them that said coach. And so they became the coaches. And so they couldn't touch the materials or anything. They just could go around and kind of oversee. And they loved it. They loved it. And the workers loved it, that they were celebrating. It was like, this is shaped right. And just shaping it, just flipping this upside down. The first time we did it, without any practice, we made a ton of mistakes, 14 hours. The next year, we did a 10% bigger house, and they did it in 12 and a half. The next year, we did another 10% bigger house, and they did it in 11 and a half hours in another place. This was getting up near $300 an hour, when the average worker only made around $25 an hour in subcontract. How is it that now we're at $300? That's a tenfold increase. Just because we took the weight off. The weight of this off of people. There's no reason why it can't be done every day. Because this is one of the things we did. We made rules, no unsafe practices. No running, no doing things you wouldn't normally do in a day. Something you gotta keep this, maintain this level of that you could do it for 8 hours. And if there was any breaking of the rules, we had a little penalty box we put you in, and so you had timeout, so they'd have to work with 21, And if the coach ever touched a material, he'd get sent to the penalty box. And also, nothing was pre-cut. No studs were pre-cut. No wires pre-cut. Nothing. Carpet's not pre-cut. No, everything had to come in its usual and customary form, just like the building supply dropped it off at the site. So we wanted to see what literally could be duplicated, and we built a house in a day. And that's amazing. You could think about it. What if you had a March Madness, a tournament? At the end of a tournament, you could have 50 houses built. A sport. Look at I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And so when I did a couple of these experiments, I said, okay, I've got to come up with something where we can take this overseas. We've got to get this out. So I'm hoping to do this again, and I'm hoping to start some businesses and help people start businesses where we can do things like this and just bloom where you're planted. Literally take over your industry. And this makes business, takes on a whole nother concept. It becomes life. It is life. The servant business model it would be heaven on earth. You would have a sense of place and purpose, and every day, the camaraderie of your fellow workers and the fellow people with you. Imagine, and I hope I could do this someday. This would be so exciting. But imagine if a person could go into a community. And so he just goes into a community. And instead of building a church, he says, no, I'm going to start a business. But I'm going to start a servant business. And so he goes in and he starts, say, an auto business. And it's a servant auto business. And then people come in and it's a ministry. And so what he does, he says, I'm starting a, quote, church, but we're not going to be 501c or anything. We're gonna offer positions of ministry to all these people, and we're going to pay you. And so auto mechanics come in and they can enter the ministry of auto mechanics. And they learn and they do this here. And they're explained that, 60% of what we're going to do, we're going to give away to poor people who can't fix their cars. And 40% of it's going to be the best price in town. People will love you. You're going to get a fair wage, but you will love coming to work. And it's an auto ministry. Goodness. And then he says, and then after he gets that going, we're going to start a construction ministry. We're going to build houses. And 60%, these skilled craftsmen are going to go and knock out a Habitat house in a day instead of this, 5-month inefficient thing. And so he starts a construction ministry. And then he goes, I'm going to start a medical ministry. And he starts a medical like this, and dentistry, and clinics. And now he's flooded. These ministries are flooded with not only income, but goodwill from the community. And then he says, you know what? People need to buy stuff. How about retail? And so this thing gets so successful that he buys, you could buy a mall for 50 cents on the dollar nowadays. So he buys a mall and he puts in all these retail ministries. And everybody in the mall is trying to do things better and clothe people and hardware and all these stores in the mall. And so you've got this amazing business growing and growing to the point he buys another mall and another shopping center. And it's all ministry. Why isn't it that? Why is it that we say, no, we don't want to do that, we want to do this? So people stare at the backs of people's heads, give 10% of their money for probably one of the most inefficient organizations in the world. Even more inefficient than our federal government, and that's pretty inefficient. The area of ministry is such a wasteful place, and we'll get into that later on. But why is it that we don't have this? Why don't we have this? It would literally, any of these businesses would wipe out. All the others would have to join. And we're not saying you're working for free. You're getting paid. You're just paid ministry staff. Instead of just a few paid ministry staffs here. I had mentioned in that last one that in my other business, I think we had about Rolodex, about 50 or 60 people. We kept kind of pretty busy. Some of them, a lot of them full-time. But we basically had about 50, 60 people full-time. Working. And but if that was a church, that's not a very big church. But 50, 60 people was a pretty big thing in our little community. Well, imagine if you had 500 or 600,000, 2,000, 5,000 people working. My gosh, the councilmen and people, you'd be loved like Dr. V. You're putting all these people to work and doing good prices for people. Your parking lot would be filled. And then people would be, their standard of living would be so high. Plus everybody, the camaraderie, this is like instead of 2 weeks on a mission field, every day is a mission field. And you'd be like Jesus saying, you know not of the food that I eat. This is so amazing. This is why Jesus could walk around with just a cane or staff and one outfit and some sandals, really. Because a life of service is the most enjoyable life you can imagine. and he went about his Father's business. And when you go about your business in a concept of serving, oh man, it's heaven on earth. It literally is heaven on earth. The servant business model will win. You can't fight it. You can't, like, he's the biggest, it was the biggest, just a couple years ago, the biggest in India. Now he's the biggest in the world. You can't fight it. Everybody loves him. He doesn't need a security staff. He doesn't need, bulletproof windows. He doesn't need, limousines. But he's happy. He's got a little apartment, and everybody loves him. Everywhere he goes on the street, people love him. And people love all the people that when you say, I work at Aravind, people go, wow. There's such a sense of belonging, of, I have a place, I have a purpose, I have meaning, because my life matters. And so I might be a dental hygienist, but man, my life matters. Or I might be, an ophthalmologist assistant, but my life matters. This right here will be a revolution of business. It will literally turn the pyramids upside down. They're already cracking. The businesses are already cracking. The institution of business is already, there's riots in the streets and things thrown through windows. Everybody's talking about the 1%, but if it were flipped upside down, you wouldn't have the protests. You wouldn't have the anger. You wouldn't be nickel and diming your workers. You wouldn't be making 400 times what they're working. So they wouldn't be trying to stab you in the back. They wouldn't be trying to take over your job. They'd be glad you're doing your job, and then they'd feel appreciated by you in their job. The servant-based business, though it may start small, can just grow exponentially without fear. Without fear. And it literally will take over. It'll take over like something you've never seen. It'll be a revolutionary, a revolution. Those who take on the servant model, the servant business, oh man, they're going to be the ones surviving. It won't have anything to do with Wall Street or your education or the new business model. The servant business model, doing what you're gifted in, doing the Christ in you, will become glorious. And it will literally, like Jack and the Beanstalk, it'll literally bust open. And it will be such a life of joy. It will be the kingdom of God on earth. I mean, it is thy kingdom come. It is thy will be done. In heaven, we're not going to be just playing harps and sitting on a cloud. We'll be busy. We'll be busy. We'll be busy.